Also this afternoon, the government minister who laid it out on the line about white privilege.
We do not want to see teachers teaching their white pupils about white privilege and inherited racial guilt. And let me be clear, any school which teaches these elements of critical race theory as fact, or which promotes partisan political views such as defunding the police without offering a balanced treatment of opposing views, is breaking the law.
Telling it like it is, but is it enough to stop the hysteria from those who have a different agenda? So there it is. Schools which teach pupils that white privilege is an uncontested fact are breaking the law, according to the Equalities Minister. This was addressing the MPs during a Commons debate on Black History Month. This was Kemi Badenoch, who said the government does not want children being taught about white privilege and their inherited racial guilt. She added that schools have a statutory duty to remain politically impartial and should not openly support the anti-capitalist Black Lives Matter movement. Her comments come as schools and universities across the UK are urged to decolonise the curriculum and examine their courses in the wake of the Black Lives Matter protest. Let's speak with Katharine Birbalsingh, who's the founder and headmistress and at the Michaela Community School. Maurice McLeod, CEO of Race on the Agenda, the social policy think tank focusing on issues that affect BAME communities. Afternoon to you both. Katharine, first of all, the Equalities Minister here went full pelt, really. What did you think of what she said?
I thought what she said was great. I really liked it, and I'm so pleased that someone's been brave enough to say something about it.
Do you think it is likely to head off this almost ongoing debate throughout all of my life? This ongoing debate about white privilege, is it? Does this seal things once and for all? Has she told us something about the law we didn't previously know?
Well, she's talking specifically about schools and what they ought to be teaching and not teaching. Obviously, the debate about white privilege is to be had, and I welcome that debate. What she's saying is that it's wrong to teach children in schools that this is a simple fact. Having a debate about whether or not white privilege exists, of course, one should have that happening in schools. That's what schools are all about, getting children to think outside the box, and I totally support that.
Maurice, what are you making of this? I mean, you represent BAME communities. Here is a rare black minister in the Conservative Party talking about these issues in Black History Month. What did you make of it?
I was really, it really depressed me, if I'm honest. As you say, it's not very often that a person of colour is in such a position. She's the minister responsible for equalities and women, and to say that she's opposed to critical race theory really worries me. So it makes me say, then what is your theory? How do you explain inequalities, or do you not think they exist, or do you think that there's something that we just have to sort of live with? I was really disappointed by what she said, and her reasons for saying that schools shouldn't support Black Lives Matter as a movement because a white protester shouted something horrible. It's just ridiculous.
I don't think her contention was just based on that. I think she was saying, there is a, and we've discussed this, Maurice, before. There is a confusion between, do Black Lives Matter? Well, obviously, unless you're an idiot. But the movement Black Lives Matter, as distinct from the slogan, they're two different things.
I'd say the movement might be different from the organisation. The movement is the millions of people that came out onto the streets and are showing support for equality. That's the movement. The organisation, you could say that's different, and whether you support that or not, because it has. There's
nobody, but critical race theory, of course, drifts into that territory where you could never appease it, doesn't it? Because who doesn't want equality? Everybody wants equality, unless you're some kind of mad, bad extremist sitting over there in the corner. But most people, I think, probably want equality in all areas. So. But you could, the critical race theory argument, and it's contentious in that it continues to advance something that might not be there, that everything is viewed through the prism of your race, and there's the problem.
The critical race theory basically says that race is invented, it's a social construct, but the impact of that invention is very real. So to be honest, I can't really see how you argue against that. Because it's become an industry, isn't it?
It's an industry that would teach, in this case, children, that if somebody bumps into you on the tube, Maurice, that could well be a racial microaggression. But if they bump into me it isn't. So we continue to live our life through that prism, in that anything that happens to us, any kind of injustice, any blip, any issue, any problem, is viewed through race. And if that's the way we live our life, then you never solve the problem, because those issues will always exist. Is there an injustice in your life? You could always say, yeah, I've got loads of injustices in my life. But if you're not white, you could claim they come because of your colour. And that's not necessarily true. And I believe, I stand to be corrected, but that is where critical race theory becomes contentious.
I completely disagree. I mean, what that suggests, what your definition there suggests, is that we need to teach more critical race theory in schools, because then people would get it. It's not sort of saying...
No, we could stop people living their life through their identity and just live their life. I mean, white privilege, this kind of invented term, which might have just had some relevance in the 50s or even up to the 70s. I mean, what you're talking about really is just privilege, not white privilege. I mean, we had this extraordinary moment at the Education Committee the other day where an academic was talking about the almost the insane way that one MP had said, you know, are white working class boys doing badly because of white privilege? They don't have any white privilege.
Well, might I say something?
Please step in, Katharine.
Yes, I think what's important here is what we're teaching in schools. People can have their opinions about all sorts outside of schools, but if we're teaching children that if you're black, you're oppressed, and if you're white, you're the oppressor, that white children should be taught that they are privileged and that black children should be taught that they are not privileged. We don't, for instance, we don't talk about the privilege of being pretty or the privilege of being tall. You know, ugly people, there's all sorts of studies that demonstrate that ugly people are more likely to go to jail and so on. I mean, there are a whole variety of privileges out there. The one that we are currently talking about and making children feel very uncomfortable about simply because of the color of their skin, and I say we, you know, there are some schools doing it. And what Miss Badenoch was saying, she was saying, look, we shouldn't do this. It's not right to politicize education. It would be wrong, for instance, for a school to promote a particular political party. Similarly, it's wrong for them to promote Black Lives Matter. That's not the same as talking about race, discussing whether or not we think the Black Lives Matter movement is good for Black people. And you might have in your debating club that as an issue that you might discuss. But when teachers come in a position of authority and tell children that the Black Lives Matter movement is by definition a very good thing, that there are no issues with it, when we tell Black children they are oppressed, this is not helpful for Black children. And I find that victimhood mentality keeps them back. And I have spent over 20 years working in the inner city with a variety of children of different ethnic minority backgrounds, including and also white children. And to tell any group that they are either oppressed or the oppressor is harmful. It also destroys relationships. One of the wonderful things about Britain is the way in which you have a multicultural community. Our community here at school has children from all different backgrounds, and they're all friends with each other, and they all support each other. What critical race theory does is it undermines those friendships, and it undermines that understanding that they have with each other, even though they are different skin colors and religions. And that's a terrible thing. And that is what she is, Miss Badenoch is fighting against. And I support her entirely in that mission.
That is, Maurice, that is reasonable, isn't it? That if you are going to, I mean, it's dangerous territory in the classroom to simply say, this is how things are, with no alternative or no examination of other factors or pressures or issues.
Yeah, absolutely. I think things should be up for debate and should be discussed. But to sort of argue that if you're going to argue that racism doesn't exist or that there is no such thing as privilege, I agree what you were just saying there. There's lots of privilege and we don't talk about much of it, and we should talk about all the different bits of our, the bits that make us up, that put us in slightly different situations. Of course, I've got male privilege, I've got straight person privilege, all of that sort of stuff. Let's talk about it all. But to suggest that having the discussion or that teaching this sort of stuff is in some way illegal, and there should be
but it's against the minister is saying it's against the law if you don't if you simply say, right, Black Lives Matter, are the oracle here. That what they say goes, and the reason is because they have this snappy name that nobody could disagree with, Black Lives Matter, so therefore all that they stand for should be supported, and if you don't support it, there's something wrong with you. You're probably a mad racist.
Well, the thing is, Maurice, is that if you want to argue against Miss Badenoch, you actually have to argue against what she said. The things that you're saying she said, like there's no such thing as racism, she never said. All of the things that you're accusing her of, she hasn't actually said. So please do pick out something she actually said and then criticize it, because you're not doing that so far.
I will do. She said that teaching critical race theory should in itself be illegal. What nonsense. She's the equalities minister. What a ridiculous thing to say.
So
that's something she said that
yes, what she's saying there is teaching that white children are the oppressor and that black children are the oppressed is wrong.
She didn't say that. She said, sorry, you said, let's talk about what she actually said. She said, teaching critical race theory is illegal. She didn't go on to, she didn't say anything about saying that white children are oppressors is illegal.
So
I agree. We shouldn't be
what
saying
do you take, because obviously you and she disagree about what critical race theory is. What do you take it to mean?
As I explained at the beginning, it's the starting from the point that race is invented, starting from the point that there is no biological difference between us, that it's a thing society has put on us, and that the impact of that is real. Which part of that do you disagree with?
Okay, I might not. I'm not sure Ms. Badenoch would necessarily disagree with that. I think the two of you have very different definitions of what critical race theory is, and so when you're saying what you're accusing her of saying X, Y, and Z, I don't think she is saying those things.
I think she seems to be saying that within the realms of the debate of critical race theory, within that, things like white privilege and Black Lives Matter will crop up, and it's important that if you're going to discuss those, then alternative and counterpoints are offered. We stop there for no other reason than time, but I do want to put that out there because of all the things that, and thank you to our two guests who brilliantly articulated two rather different points there. We had Katharine Birbalsingh, who's the founder and headmistress of the Michaela Community School, and Maurice McLeod, friend of the show, CEO of Race on the Agenda, a social policy think tank focusing on issues that affect BAME communities. And of course, I think that's one of the problems, isn't it? That a lot of the issues that face BAME communities will face every community. If you just throw that through the prism of race, then you will always get out the other end. As sure as night follows day, you will get an indiscretion, an aggression, a form of racism of some sort. White privilege, nonsense. We are talking about privilege. That is real. Is it a problem? Is it surmountable? Yeah. Has there been white privilege in the past? Absolutely. I mean, I would just call that basically racism. But nobody's disputing racism no more than you would dispute any other form of criminality. That would just be bonkers if you did. But the catch-all phrase white privilege has got to go. It's anti-intellectual for a start. I don't like using the word offensive, but it particularly to young, and we mentioned young white working class boys, to be told that you've got absolutely sod all in your life. You've got nothing around you, no sense of encouragement, very few opportunities. Statistically, your life is going to turn out to not be very good because your education is so poor. There are family-based issues behind that. There are social-based issues behind that. There are government policy-based issues behind that. But hey, don't worry, little white working class boys. You have privilege. Get out of here. No, they don't.